Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Do the terms of the Uniform Civil Code enacted by the Uttarakhand government with specific reference to live-in relationships breach the law of the land as well as our fundamental constitutional rights? That's the key issue I shall explore with one of the most highly regarded former judges of the Supreme Court, Justice Madan Lokur. Justice Lokur, I want to focus this interview on what the Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code says about live-in relationships. But before I come to details, and I will in a moment's time, let me ask you, what is your overall opinion of the way the UCC specifically treats live-in relationships?
Yes, thank you, Karan, for having me here in this program. Frankly, I do not know why, this idea of live-in relationships was brought into the UCC. What is the purpose? Okay, what is the legislature trying to achieve? I have read a statement by somebody who was perhaps involved in it, or perhaps was a legislator, to say that there have been instances when we were traveling around, we came across instances of heinous crimes being committed when two persons were living together, and that is why we wanted to include the idea of live-in relationships. Now, I don't know whether there is any data available to indicate that heinous crimes were committed. Live-in relationships, in any case, are covered by the Domestic Violence Act, protection of women against domestic violence. So, really, I'm not sure what was the purpose of bringing in a specific part in the UCC dealing with live-in relationships.
You're referring to the Indian Express, I take it, and an official of the Uttarakhand government who's not named by the paper has told the paper on the 7th that the registration is necessary because of heinous crimes among live-in couples. In other words, it's for their protection, for their own good. Do you accept that argument?
I don't, because there's no data. I mean, just merely saying it doesn't advance anybody's case. Like I said, in the Domestic Violence Act, they already have recognized live-in relationships. So, is there any data that after the enactment of the Domestic Violence Act, there have been heinous crimes committed against women? I don't know. I don't think there is any data. There may be, a couple of crimes that have been committed, like that Shraddha Walkar, for example, but that can happen in a marriage also, So really, in the absence of any data to say that, well, we need a separate law in spite of the fact that we have a Domestic Violence Act, I don't know. It's difficult to say yes or no to,
All right. Against that background, where you're legitimately questioning the purpose behind bringing in live-in relationships into a uniform civil code, you say you can't understand what the purpose is. Against that background, let's come to details. First of all, everyone living in Uttarakhand, regardless of whether they belong to the state or not, has to register their live-in relationship within a month of getting into one, and similarly must submit a statement of termination when they end the relationship. Failure to do so can lead to 3 months imprisonment. How do you view this essential requirement to register your relationship?
Again, what is the purpose of it, right? If two people are living together and they're, I mean, there's no problem. How does it cause any problem to anybody, right? So what really is the purpose of having this registration? And to say that, listen, if you don't register, we're going to send you to jail or impose a fine of 25,000. I think that's a little too much. When people are married, they get married. The marriage is sometimes not registered, right? You don't send them to jail for that, for not registering their marriage, or putting a fine of 25,000. So really, I don't see why they want to register these live-in relationships. Like I said, if they're trying to do it for the protection of women against heinous crimes, well, is there any data to suggest that? Is there any data to suggest that if these marriages are registered, or if these live-in relationships are registered, heinous crimes will disappear or will not exist? Why just bring in something, bring in the executive to somebody's, household, in a sense, to say that, listen, you better register or else.
Now, this law applies to residents of Uttarakhand who live outside the state as well. They have to register their relationship with the registrar of the area where they ordinarily reside. And the question occurred to me, what happens if you're an Uttarakhandi who's never lived in Uttarakhand? I, for instance, am a Punjabi who's never lived in Punjab.
Yeah. You see, the expression used is may. A person who is supposed to be a resident of Uttarakhand, but is not residing there or has never resided there, then he may register. But at the same time, he may not register. The problem is that, if you remember, in many of these documents, you're asked to give your present address and your permanent address, right? So you give your permanent address someplace in Uttarakhand, but you've never stayed over there, but that's your ancestral home. Maybe your father or your grandfather live over there. So you give that as your permanent address. So it applies to those kind of persons. But again, it's may. Okay, they may register, they may not register. But the way in which the law is being twisted, at the present moment on many areas, somebody may say that, well, it is mandatory. The registrar may say it is mandatory, you've not done it, and get after that person. So while I think that it is not obligatory, the law can be twisted by the authorities and say, well, we think it is obligatory, and therefore we are going to send you to jail, or whenever you come to Uttarakhand, we are going to have you arrested, or we are going to send the Uttarakhand police to arrest you.
So there is room here for harassment.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Now, second, the registrar is entitled to conduct an inquiry to ascertain whether both parties are adults, whether they are unmarried, and whether their relationship falls within what's called prohibited relationships. The registrar can also deny permission. How do you view this?
I think it's very strange. What kind of an inquiry will the registrar conduct? I mean, the couple could have got married in any part of the country, right? So is he going to put a advertisement in the newspaper to say that, listen, these two people have, come to register their live-in relationship? So I put in an advertisement in all the newspapers all over the country to find out if they're married. They're saying they're not married. Okay. Now, I don't know what kind of an inquiry he's going to conduct. It's supposed to be a summary inquiry, by the way. How is he going to conduct that inquiry? And supposing he comes to a conclusion wrongly, right, that these people are married, or at least one of them is married, and he says, I have come to the conclusion that you are married, right? I don't want to show you the evidence. I'm not obliged to show you the evidence. And therefore, I reject your application for registration. Now, how is that person going to go around proving that he's not married? Okay, that's one. Number two, the reason that has been given obviously is incorrect. There's no provision for an appeal. Perhaps that person can go to the registrar general or he can go to the High Court. Now, are you suggesting that these kind of people should get into litigation just because they want to live together, and because some registrar comes to some conclusion that, oh, it's by force, or oh, I think this person is a minor. You produce a birth certificate. Now, all kinds of problems are can harassment is the word that he used. This can be a first class way of harassing a live-in couple.
Justice Lokur, it's widely presumed that the target behind the inquiry the registrar will conduct is in fact interfaith live-in couples. But even if this government has an aversion to them, is it justified in seeking ways of preventing interfaith live-in relationships? Because clearly that seems to be the intention.
Well, like I said again, why are you legislating on this aspect? Interfaith marriages are permitted, all right, under the Special Marriage Act. What's wrong with interfaith live-in relationships? If the intention is to prevent interfaith live-in relationships, you can't say it directly, right? Because it will be against the Constitution. So you're doing something indirectly which you cannot do directly. I mean, that's not permissible, right? And that is surreptitious in a sense. So really, why is this idea of registering live-in relationships being brought about? That's, I think, a central question.
The third worrying aspect is that the registrar has a duty to forward details of such live-in relationships to the local police station. Why should the police be informed?
Exactly. Why should the police be informed? What have they got to do with it? Right? If the idea is to prevent heinous crimes, as it appears to be, how will informing the police help him? Is the police going to come to their house every day to find out that, listen, is there some heinous crime being committed over here? That never happens. When you were talking about interfaith relationships, what about intercaste? That can also be, you can have a marriage, intercaste marriage under the Special Marriage Act. But here you say, no, you see, I will not give you permission for some flimsy reason or something. So really, it is, in a sense, becoming and can become an instrument of harassment. And just for the heck of it.
I agree. Fourth, if one of the partners is under the age of 21, the registrar has to inform the parents of that partner. Now, isn't this blatantly against the existing law of the land? In India, an individual is an adult at 18 and no longer requires parental permission for anything they wish to do.
Right. So why bring in this law? Now, look at the converse of it. When a 17-year-old child, a boy, commits a crime, all right, or is alleged to have committed a crime, the police arrest him and show him as 19 years old, so that he goes into the criminal justice system and not into the juvenile justice system. And the child has to then go on proving through various means to show that he's not 19 and that he's actually 17 or 16 or whatever, but below 18. Now, here in a situation like this, supposing the police come and say that, you say you're 19, but we say you're 17 or you're 16. And therefore, this relationship is prohibited. Now, you expect that person, that girl, to go around proving that she's above 18? I don't know what sense does it make?
In fact, if I can interrupt, she has to be above 21, because if she's under 21, if either of the partners in the relationship is under 21, their parents will be informed, as if to assume that they cannot enter a live-in relationship without parental permission. That is against the law of the land, because at 18, you are entitled to act independently of your parents.
Absolutely. So really, it doesn't make any sense to me.
A connected point, Justice Lokur, is that a girl can marry at 18, but it seems she cannot live in a live-in relationship without her parents' permission if she's under 21. This contradicts what is already the statutory law as regards marriage. A different
Correct.
age level has been set for live-in relationships.
Correct. And why is the permission of the parents needed? I mean, parents will object, so therefore you can't have a relationship like this. I mean, what is the purpose that the legislature is trying to achieve, or what is the purpose that the law is trying to achieve?
Most people assume that the reason why permission of parents is needed is to put an obstacle in the front of interfaith live-in relationships. The parents will object and would be given that right to do so if one of the partners is under 21.
Okay, so there's an objection to interfaith relationship. There's an objection to intercaste relationship. What happens? The girl runs away, or the couple decide to elope, right? And then a case is filed against the boy for kidnapping. All right, all kinds of problems get created. Why are you doing this? I mean, are you doing this just to harass people, who want to live together? Okay, take a situation. Take a situation, where there is no relationship, but two people come to Uttarakhand. They're looking for a job, a male and a female. They're looking for a job. They're looking for accommodation. They can't afford, adequate accommodation because of the rent being very high or whatever. So they decide to live together in a house. They take a place on rent. No relationship, just shared accommodation, nothing else. They may have to register their live-in relationship, because somebody can complain, a third party can complain that they are living together in the nature of marriage.
Absolutely. You're referring, Justice Lokur, to Section 386 of the Uttarakhand law, which allows any third party to submit a complaint that a live-in relationship has not been registered. Here, clearly, would you agree, there are grounds to encourage moral policing, grounds to encourage some form of reprehensible vigilantism, and as you said, grounds for harassment.
Yes. Take a couple which is not in a relationship. Okay, there's so many of them. I mean, there are people here in Delhi, for example, they want to live together because they can't afford the rent. But there's no relationship in the nature of marriage. Okay, they happen to be friends and they happen to know each other. So they say, all right, let's share the accommodation. Some person comes and says, oh, I think you're having a relationship in the nature of marriage and you've not registered. And the police come and they say, oh, it's in the nature of marriage. How do they go around proving that it's not in the nature of marriage? It's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to prove a negative of this nature.
Is there not also a moral issue here? We're encouraging sneaking and snitching on people.
Yes, yeah. So third parties, somebody who wants to, act tough, moral policing, vigilantes, they can come and say, yeah,
Justice Lokur, the audience will have noticed that at least in 4 different places when we began discussing the details of the Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code with specific reference to live-in relationships, you used the word harassment. You used it first for the requirement to register. Secondly, you used it because the police have to be informed. Thirdly, you used it with reference to the age. If you're under 21, parental permission has to be obtained. And fourthly, this business of Section 386, which allows any third party to submit a complaint that a live-in relationship has not been registered. 4 times the details have led you to use the word harassment. Do you get the feeling that overall, the way the UCC in Uttarakhand treats live-in relationships is making for huge harassment of innocent people?
Yes, it is. It is. Laws, we know it. I mean, laws are being misused, right? People who give an innocent tweet are being, put inside for sedition. Okay. So laws are being misused. this law can also be misused. And the fact that you give a third party, some character staying in the neighborhood, or not even in the neighborhood, he may be staying somewhere else, saying that, oh, there's a live-in relationship going on. Then what happens? I mean, it's nothing but sheer harassment.
Would you say, Justice Lokur, that a law that has so many opportunities to be misused and to be misused so easily is a bad law?
It is a bad law. I mean, it's arbitrary. First of all, we don't even know why the law has been enacted. What is the purpose? Okay. Now, perhaps, I don't know, whatever the purpose may be, to give protection to women or something. But how does it give protection to women? That's a question that you have to ask. So really, this gives a lot of room. There are a lot of holes in it. There are a lot of gaps in it, which can be misused and cause harassment.
I'll just underline that for the audience. You believe the way the UCC in Uttarakhand treats live-in relationships is a bad law. It's arbitrary. There are a lot of gaps and holes in it, which is where and how it can be misused. Now, in 2017, in the Puttaswamy case, the Supreme Court said that privacy is a fundamental right. The judgment spoke about, and I'm quoting, personal information which has no relationship to any public activity or interest, as well as, and again I'm quoting, unwarranted invasion of the privacy of the individual. Doesn't this law, as we've discussed it, trample all over those areas which Puttaswamy said must be reserved for the privacy of individuals?
It does. One, you have to give some kind of a declaration before the registrar, right? The police has to be informed. In some cases, the parents have to be informed. Where is the privacy in this? I mean, if everybody has to be informed, and then an inquiry has to be conducted. Okay, your neighbors have to be satisfied. Your immediate neighbors or persons in the neighborhood have to be satisfied, that you are having a bona fide live-in relationship. Where is the privacy involved in all this? I mean, short of telling the whole world, you're telling everybody,
Let's come to some of the aspects of what the UCC says about live-in relationships, which could be considered welcome. First, the woman can claim maintenance on grounds of desertion. Whilst that is progressive, should it be limited to the woman? What happens if the woman deserts the man and she's the richer of the two? Why can't the man claim maintenance?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Well, I don't see why in an unregistered live-in relationship, a woman cannot claim maintenance. I don't know if it has been tested in courts, but I don't see why not. Okay, so therefore this law doesn't really, it just codifies that right. Okay. Second, why not a male? The male partner can also claim maintenance. What's wrong with it? Under the general law, Hindu Marriage Act, for example, if the wife is earning a good enough amount and the husband says that, listen, I don't have any money, he can apply for maintenance. Whether he gets it or not is a different matter. Whether he's able to prove it or not is a different matter. So really, there is no reason why a male should be excluded in this.
Second, any child born of a live-in relationship will be deemed legitimate. Would you accept this is clearly a welcome step?
It is. It is. But what happens? What happens if the registrar says, I'm not registering it, and it is a bona fide live-in relationship? What happens to the child? The child will be considered illegitimate. Why? Because the registrar comes to some strange conclusion and there's no appeal. You have to go to the High Court. Look at the possibilities, that can arise in the implementation of the law.
Quite right. This is another area where the requirement to register could become an obstacle leading to harassment for the child who's been born within a legitimate live-in relationship, but because that relationship is not registered and recognized by the registrar, the child is deemed to be illegitimate.
Right, right.
However, Justice Lokur, as far as I can tell, the Uttarakhand law does not confer all the rights that married couples have on live-in couples. I'm talking specifically about inheritance and adoption. Has it fallen short here?
Yeah, it has. It has. Again, what are you trying to do? You know, are you trying to say that this is a step just short of marriage, and therefore we are not prepared to recognize a lot of other things? I don't know. Again, we come back to the question: what is the purpose of this law? If the purpose of the law is, preventing a woman from a heinous crime, then all this becomes immaterial. It also the legitimacy of the child also becomes immaterial. Okay. Now you have, we are talking about young couples. What about old couples? There may be instances where a pensioner is residing with a male pensioner is residing with a female pensioner, and the female pensioner is getting family pension because her husband was entitled to pension. And you say, well, they're both living in the nature of marriage, and a married woman is not entitled to family pension, so therefore we cancel her family pension. How do you deal with these kind of situations? Has all this been thought through? So you can say that, well, I want to give some benefits, but I don't want to give other benefits.
It emerges that this is a very poorly thought through section of the UCC.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So
First
you,
of all, yeah, sorry.
so
First of all,
you agree, very poorly thought through.
very poorly thought through, yes. First of all, why do you want it? Okay, when you want it for a particular reason, specify that particular reason and say that we don't want it for other reasons. That is very difficult to accept. But then if you want it and the purpose is that you need it because society needs it, then go all the way, and give everything that should be given.
Now, as enacted,
Yeah.
the UCC regarding live-in relationships only applies to a live-in relationship between a man and a woman. To be truly progressive, should it not apply to homosexual live-in relationships and indeed transgender live-in relationships?
Yeah, they don't have to be registered. It doesn't say so. So if a gay couple wants to have a live-in relationship, they don't have to register it.
You're suggesting something very interesting. Let me just clarify. In other words, gay couples living together or transgender couples living together are not required to register their relationship. Therefore, they are being treated differently to heterosexual couples living together. Heterosexual couples have to go through the harassment we've discussed in significant detail. Gay couples and transgender couples who have live-in relationships are spared that in quotes torment.
Yes, yes, because a living relationship is defined as cohabitation between a man and a woman. All right, not between a man and a man and a man and a woman and a woman. So a gay couple or a transgender couple doesn't have to register a living relationship.
So by implication, gay live-in relationships or transgender live-in relationships will have an easier time in Uttarakhand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That clearly is not what the authorities intended, but that is what emerges.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. They may have intended that. One doesn't know.
Absolutely. One has no idea what was in their mind. Finally, Justice Lokur, I get the feeling from everything you're saying that this law will undoubtedly be challenged in court. In your eyes, which are the sections of the law which could be the most legally vulnerable?
Well, first of all, I mean, the whole law, this part of the UCC, okay, I think the state will have to justify why they have enacted it. Okay. Now, you can't have a law which has got so many gaps in it. And expect the court to, say that it's constitutionally valid. It becomes arbitrary if in its application you have so many gaps. All right. And if that is so, then the entire part, whatever part 3, I think, of the UCC, that will have to go. So it's not that one section is bad, or another section is bad, or few words here and there are bad. It's the entire part which will have to go.
So if I hear you correctly, you're saying if challenged, the entire section of the Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code dealing with live-in relationships could end up being scrapped.
Yeah, right. On the ground that it violates Article 21 of the Constitution, which gives every person the right to privacy, personal liberty, respect, dignity, and Article 14 of the Constitution, which requires equal treatment.
In other words, not only is this bad law, but you're saying to me, as one of the most highly regarded former judges of the Supreme Court, if challenged on grounds of violating Article 21 and Article 14, the entire section in the Uttarakhand Uniform Civil Code dealing with live-in relationships could end up being scrapped.
Right.
Just
one of the principal reasons is this aspect of registration, and the harassment that accompanies, and the refusal to register. I mean, it's a whole range of things.
Justice Lokur, thank you very much for this interview.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.